Hey guys, Brandon Johnson here again, and thanks for joining me. Today I wanted to talk about something that I consider to be the most important fundamental of guitar, and honestly the most important fundamental of all music across all instruments, and that is tempo, rhythm, and timing. Honestly, I've seen a lot of guitar players out there who have all the licks, and they can play super fast, and they can play every lick in the book. Fast licks and speed and chops are meaningless unless you have a good understanding of tempo and timing. So I think, for me especially, I like to focus on the rhythm and the tempo before I focus on the notes or the lick or the song or whatever it is I'm playing, because you want to rely on your muscle memory to play the notes, and you want your focus to be on the rhythm and the tempo, because then you can effectively communicate what you're trying to play to the audience and to the other musicians on stage. And trust me, they will pick up on that immediately. The mark of a really good musician on any instrument is being able to play something simple really, really well. Like a simple 12-bar blues, for example. And what you'll notice is that, the Norman Blakes, the Brian Suttons, the Tony Rices of the world, they generally tend to play, when they're performing, they tend to play under their abilities. And the reason that they do that is because they're trying to play music. They're not trying to impress anyone. They're not trying to be the fastest picker in the room. They're trying to create music, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to communicate ideas, musical ideas, through your instrument. One of my all-time favorite guitar players is actually a jazz guitar player by the name of Charlie Hunter. And Charlie Hunter is a master at rhythm and timing. And he's also got all the chops, all the licks, all the speed, but that's not his primary concern. His primary concern is good timing and good tempo. And I've heard him say that, he's a guitar player and he's also a drummer, but he considers himself a drummer first. Even though he never performs on the drums live, he considers the drums to be the most important instrument that he knows how to play. And he can carry the concepts of the drums, rhythm, timing, pocket, into his guitar playing. And what it does is it allows him to communicate music more effectively.
Whereas guitar players, we tend to spend a lot of time, especially coming up as a guitar player, you tend to spend a lot of time trying to learn what do you think is the coolest kind of thing, and can I learn how to blaze through this thing real fast, but never really coming to terms with the fundamentals of the music, which is the rhythm and the groove and the time.
So in music, and bluegrass especially, I've noticed the tendency is to rush the tempo. A lot of bluegrass pickers rush the tempo way too much, and they don't have the ability to stay in the pocket consistently throughout the entire song. And what ends up happening is they're playing really, really fast, and they sort of go to the next section too soon, or they go to the next chord too soon, or they play this crazy lick, and then they reach the end of the lick and they end it too quickly, and then the rest of the band tries to compensate by filling in that lost time, and then the whole band is rushing, and it's an anticlimactic train wreck. So I think one thing that you can do to really, really make sure that you're keeping a solid tempo is to just make sure that you're not going into the next, whether it's the next chord or the next note, too soon. So don't rush into the next note. You might be playing at a good tempo, but then you rush into the next note because you're not really, you're thinking about something else, or you're thinking about the lick or whatever, and you're just not thinking about timing. And if you're not focusing on your timing and your rhythm, the lick is not being communicated effectively, and the lick is useless. So you really want to focus on the tempo first. That should be front of mind while you're playing guitar. The rhythm, the downbeat, the pocket, that's what you want to focus on. And you just want to allow your muscle memory to create the solo, or to create the, whatever it is that you're trying to create, whether it's rhythm or a solo. Just rely on your muscle memory to create the notes, and use your conscious mind to focus on the rhythm and the tempo, and make that your priority. You want to listen on a very deep level. You want to when you're up there playing, you want to really train your mind to focus on what you're hearing and what the sound of the band is, and what the and what your place in that overall sound is. So here's what I would recommend. If you want to get better at timing and tempo, you should practice to a metronome as much as possible. I've heard different opinions on this from different pickers, and I've talked to a lot of really, really good pickers who have a great understanding of timing and tempo and have great chops, which is the holy grail. You know, you have both timing and chops. And what they do is they practice to a metronome constantly. They don't perform to a metronome, obviously, but they're practicing when they're sitting alone at home, they're practicing to a metronome. And what that does is that internalizes the tempo in your mind, right? So when you sit down to practice to the metronome, you know, let the metronome run for a little bit. You know, let it run and just listen to the metronome and internalize the tempo, and then start to play to it. And always when you're playing to a metronome, what I like to do is I like to think about the metronome almost as a drummer, like as if I'm playing to a drummer, as if there's another musician in the room just sitting there hitting something, a cowbell or something. And you want to play off of that as if it's another player. So you really want to keep that in your mind. It's a matter of focus. You know, like anything in life, success in any domain in life is about focus, and it's about attention span. And a lot of people today do not have a very long attention span. So, you know, what happens is that they get up there and they start playing at a good tempo to start, maybe for the first few bars, and then they lose focus and the tempo just disintegrates and they start thinking about something else, and really they lose the pocket. And if you lose the pocket, you've lost the energy. And the audience isn't really aware of what happened, you know, because they're not musicians, so they're not like, oh, the band lost the pocket, or they're rushing the tempo. All they know is that something isn't sounding great. It's just not, the energy is just not there. The builds are not effective. It's anticlimactic. They don't really know what's going on. It's not their job to figure that out. It's your job as the musician to figure out, you know, to communicate musically and to communicate effectively with rhythm and timing. So it's really a matter of focus, and you want to cultivate that focus and that attention span by playing to a metronome as much as humanly possible. And you want to internalize a steady tempo throughout the entire song. And that's what great musicians do, and great drummers. They keep the pocket, they keep that thing going consistently throughout the entire song. There's no fluctuation whatsoever. And what that is it's practice, but it's a mental focus. It's an ability to focus on something for a long period of time. Fundamentally, that's really what it is. And you know, you can practice that, and you should practice that, and that's the most important thing. And you know, learning all the notes and playing all the licks perfectly, that's cool. You know, practice that as well. But make timing and tempo your primary focus when you're practicing and when you're performing. So I found there's a couple techniques and there's a couple things that you can kind of hold in your mind while you're playing that can help you keep tempo better, or sort of approach what I would call a pocket groove, or is what, you know, funk musicians would call a pocket groove, which is where even though you're playing fast, you're still kind of holding back the beat slightly. So you're not really rushing the beat. You're not accelerating the beat forward, which kills all the momentum. You're actually focusing on, you know, holding it back, keeping it consistent, but holding it back in a way where it doesn't feel like it's rushing. So one thing that I like to do to make sure that I'm keeping tempo well is I like to make sure that the notes that I'm playing when I'm playing a solo are evenly spaced in time, right? So each note that you play should have an equal ring out. So one thing you can do is you can play quarter notes, just quarter notes over a simple G major scale. And you could move this, transpose this over any key that you want, any scale that you want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward and pretty simple, but what we're focusing on is not how simple the notes are. What we're focusing on is making sure that each note lands with good time, so that each note lands right on the quarter note and it doesn't rush into the next quarter note. So you let the note ring out to its full time to its, you want to give that note its full day in the sun before you go to the next note. So now what we're going to do is we're going to play eighth notes. So we're going to play 2 notes for each quarter note beat. So we're going to evenly space them, and we're not going to rush into the next one. So that's what you want to focus on. You want to focus on the metronome and making these notes evenly spaced as possible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. All right, so now let's try 16th notes. So 16th notes are going to be 4 notes for each quarter note. So we're basically just going to be playing alternating picking all the way up with no gaps in between. And we're really going to want to try to focus on evenly spacing the notes and letting each note ring out to its fullest time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now let's focus on finger picking. So if you're finger picking and you're doing an alternating bass type of pattern like you would hear in, the Chet Atkins version of Windy and Warm, for example, what Chet Atkins is doing is he's using the alternating bass as a timing mechanism. So you'll hear that alternating bass between the A string and the E string, and it'll match up perfectly with the metronome. Of course, he's not playing with a metronome when you hear him play live, but he's using that alternating bass essentially as a timing mechanism or as an internal metronome, and then he's playing the lead parts over it. So it's a great exercise to work on your alternating bass. And all I'm really doing here with this Chet Atkins version of Windy and Warm is playing an A minor, and then using that A minor, that A string and that E string as alternating bass. You want to focus on the metronome and allow your muscle memory to actually play the song itself, because if you're focusing on the notes and getting each note perfectly right, you're kind of neglecting the fundamentals.